Jim Carroll, Ralph Baber, psychology takeaway. You need a dose of the real. Life's absurd. We know the deal. Did you hear? Don't let it get you down. Turn that frown. Upside down, down, upside.
Well, I feel a little upside down today, Ralph. How about you?
Yeah, as we said in last week's show, we looked at some of the economics that have happened since 1970 and became a little depressed and kind of felt upside down.
Indeed.
But here's a thing that is interesting to me, Jim. Over 30% of Americans report that they feel that the current political situation has caused strain within their families and that they have had arguments with loved ones, and that has caused them to cease communication or avoid certain topics or avoid talking with their brother or other loved one at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that increases the sense of social isolation. I'm all by myself.
Yeah, good point there, Ralph. We talked 2 weeks ago about that one big number, 650,000.
Yeah.
The number that's associated with divorce in the U.S. And failure to communicate was number one problem. And I think if you have this kind of polarized situation in your house, that's going to cause a lot of anxiety and self isolation, and that'll lead to you not feeling accepted and loved within your own community.
Yeah, and one of the things that when we talk about political worry and isolation, a lot of people say, well, I feel that I want to protest what's happening now.
Mm-hmm.
And I encourage, for example, my wife belongs to a political organization that feels that protesting what's going on now is a good thing to do.
Okay, so peaceful protests?
Peaceful protests, and I have encouraged her to do that. Now, I don't, I am not an activist, so I don't go out and carry a sign and say I'm protesting. I guess those of you who might remember the motorcycle movie where can't remember the actor now, who's asked by a waitress. The motorcycle club comes into town and the waitress says, "You're one of those rebels who are protesting. What are you protesting?" And he looks at her and says, "What do you got?"
Like anything.
Yeah.
Equal opportunity protester.
Yeah.
Well, in a way, protesting is a way of handling anxiety because you feel like you're a little bit more in control, even if you're not in control.
Right.
But when the protests get out of hand, like the one we saw in Minneapolis not long ago, and people start getting killed, then the feeling of being in control goes out the window. I can remember back in the 60s. Yes, Ralph, I do remember the 60s.
I guess you weren't there then.
With Kent State.
Yeah.
That was a peaceful protest that went really wrong. And then for a long time, the protests on college campuses weren't peaceful. Now on this campus, we're not seeing any kind of student activism that I've noticed, at least.
No, there certainly is no visible protest as students walk
Yeah.
up and down in front of any building and say we're protesting
Mm-hmm.
X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But, the thing that to me is self-evident is if you're going to protest and you say, I'm peacefully protesting, that's legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
Driving your car at an armed police officer does not strike me as being a good, peaceful activity.
No, it's relatively unpeaceful and not real smart. Yeah, no question about that.
So,
you know,
I guess the thing, Jim, to me is that we look at that and we say, for values of peaceful, we support it.
mm-hmm.
For values of, I don't care, I'm going to make myself known, we don't support it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So taking some kind of stand, might help with, anxiety. Now, you don't have to drive your car. Maybe writing a letter, sending your congressman or your state rep, or your local township guy, or gal, some sort of a note saying that you support, I don't know, more affordable housing. We don't know how to get more affordable housing for people, but you would support that, and you'd support efforts to make housing more affordable. That kind of thing would make, I think, us feel a little bit more in control,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Now, there are a couple other things. We talked about this last week, the Overcoming Anxiety book. But there's another book out there that hasn't been written yet, at least not by us, and that's a book on Stoicism. Now, Stoics are kind of interesting, in a situation like this, where, maybe a major country is being invaded by another major country. What would Seneca have to say? What would
Well, I think,
one of the fathers of Stoicism?
yeah, or Marcus Aurelius, another father. Marcus Aurelius would say to a person who's concerned about this, what can you control?
I can't control the military of country X.
I can't control the actions of country Y.
Mm-hmm.
What can I control? Well, I can control my own reaction to country X or country Y.
Mm-hmm.
And so what my reaction is, okay, I don't like what country X is doing. On the other hand, I didn't like what country Y was doing. So what do? Well, I can go out and march up and down in front of City Hall and say, I'm part of a protest group. We are protesting the actions of the current government of country X.
Okay.
Now, if you live in a country where you have the right to assemble and peacefully protest, that's good. If you have a country where they say peaceful protest is not allowed, for example,
Maybe
Russia,
Soviet Union,
Soviet Union.
former Soviet Union, yeah. Then it's, if you do it, you're going to do it at your own risk, right?
right.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make your own assessment of, is this risky peaceful protest or not?
Mm-hmm.
Well, as I said, for values of peaceful protest, it's not risky and it should be done.
Okay. Or you might just say, well, like I think Seneca was told that he was going to be executed, or maybe it was Marcus Aurelius, I'm not sure. And he said, when is that going to happen? And the guard said, this afternoon. He said, well, then I think I'll have lunch.
Yeah.
You can't do anything, well, you can have lunch.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's no action that you can take immediately
Mm-hmm.
that will change the event.
Yeah. And so, if you do attempt to change the event, you might just get very frustrated, right?
Yeah,
So you're already frustrated by the event. You try to change it, and your frustration level goes way, way up.
yeah.
So
Now,
what's the takeaway then here for all these people who are worried about inflation, or worried about healthcare costs, or worried about AI taking over their jobs? Should we just avoid any kind of information about this? Should we think about it and do anything?
well, there's two things, Jim. One of them is a lot of psychologists have said the thing to do is information dieting.
That is what?
Well, instead of watching all evening various news sources or ostensible news sources, you say, I'm going to do what people did in the 60s. There was a 30-minute news event that happened at 6 o'clock,
Right.
and I'm going to watch 30 minutes of news.
Okay.
So you put yourself on a diet, you limit the amount of news that you absorb, and that can help prevent emotional burnout.
Okay. I remember my folks up in Canada would watch the CBC 11 o'clock news, which, is, I guess, a lot tamer than some of the news today. But even going to bed with that in your head probably wasn't a good thing. So if you kind of go in this diet, just say, okay, no news after 6:30. Alex was in here a few minutes ago, and he said, well, if I can look out and there's no mushroom-shaped cloud, I guess it's an okay day. Well, yeah. So if you go to bed and you have not heard the sonic boom, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So something I do in the morning, and I probably shouldn't do it, according to some psychologists, is I take a look at my email before devotions with my wife, and then I also take a look at the kind of the local news, the Channel 9 and 10 news out of Cadillac, ostensibly to get the weather forecast. But, I look and see what other kinds of things are, happening around mid-Michigan. And then sometimes I will, push in CNN just to see what's happening in the world. Maybe I shouldn't have put in CNN, right?
Yeah.
Or Fox or anything else. So
Here's-
avoid, not only limit it, but also look at the times that you're sampling stuff. Maybe midday is a better time, so you can kind of get rid of some of the slime before you,
Yeah.
go to bed.
And the other thing is there's a couple of sources that,
Yeah, you
People-
say there are some unbiased sources. And you
well,
talk
I'm
about
not
that,
necessarily saying unbiased, but the Associated Press,
Yeah.
particularly the Associated Press fact check,
Mm-hmm.
gives verified claims.
Okay.
And Reuters it's known for data-driven journalism.
Okay.
So,
And it used to be that the New York Times was that kind of news organization, but that gets kind of, I don't know, not the word discredited, but we have to wonder if indeed that is the unbiased source. Now, you mentioned earlier when we were, in getting coffee, that the Economist out of Britain, was relatively unbiased because they, for the most part, report numbers. But
yeah, they report facts
yeah,
that
There's-
how global events are going to affect the U.S. economy.
no, there's a little book that came out in, I think it was 1953, called How to Lie with Statistics. And I can tell you, Ralph, that you can take any objective measure of anything and twist it so it stands on its head. So even the fact-driven economist, I'm not saying that they are twisting data, but hey, data is not difficult to twist. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you look at yourself and you say, well, who can I trust? I think part of it is you can trust yourself to some extent. The manager that we talked about last week, who was concerned about her kids and feeding her kids, said that she would steal in order to get food for her kids. Well, is that the best approach, or is another approach that you're going to find better food, better quality food, prepare the food differently? Not necessarily that you are going to go, down to just eating hot dogs and potato chips, but rather do a different kind of approach to eating. I've never seen her kids, but I've seen kids in this town. Almost every kid in this town is overweight. Okay, so eating a little less processed food might not be a bad idea.
That could be true. And one of the other things is, if you hear a news source that says, yes, this is true, and then you hear another news source that says, no, this is not true, the best source to make the evaluation is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You put together all the background you have and you say, do I believe that or not? Whichever answer you come up with, you then say, okay, I'm going to look tomorrow to see what other commentators are saying. 90% say that yes was the right answer. Do I trust them? To what extent?
Mm-hmm.
Or 90% say no was the right answer. And sometimes you have to say to yourself, no, in my mind, the right answer is the one that 90% are not supporting. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
you can still be right. The majority does not necessarily mean correct.
Good point. Good point. So rely less upon the quotes experts and more upon your own gut.
I would say that, yeah. You know, my take on, for example, I'll give you a personal bias here. My take on climate change is, yes, the climate is changing. It's always changing. It goes up, it goes down. Do we believe that we're going to be the Midwest is going to go back into the super dry period that it did in the 1930s? Maybe not. But does that mean that there's no climate change? Almost certainly there is.
Yeah, climates change. Okay,
Climates
we've
change.
had that
They
kind
had,
of
they
cyclic
have
thing. Yeah.
they have climbed and receded for thousands, hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
years, millions of years.
Well, I think
And-
the big deal here is it man-made? And if it's man-made, can we then limit the behavior that we have that is causing some sort of, problematic climate change?
Yeah, and
that's what we don't have good
we don't have a
agreement
good
on.
answer for. But
Mm-hmm.
the people who say, well, it's all caused by the pollution from cars, and so if we eliminated the gasoline engine and went electric, we'd have no problem.
Yeah,
Well-
then what's the next problem down the road?
The
Well,
next
we have to
problem is, where do we get the electricity?
and how do we get it? Yeah. So we build wind farms and that kind of thing. And, it's not in your pay grade or mine, Ralph, to solve some of these problems. But you could say, okay, well, I'm just going to make sure that my cow that I keep in the front yard doesn't emit a lot of methane gas, right?
Right.
Okay. And in fact, we could say, hey, it would be good if a lot of people kept their cows from emitting methane gas, and our politicians as well, right, Ralph?
Right.
Yeah, we can't solve this, but we can say, I think in the long run, things are going to work out. In the short term, everything looks shaky. You know,
Yeah.
you and I grew up under a mushroom-shaped cloud up in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. We had nuclear fallout attacks. People were drills. People were building fallout shelters. I don't know if anybody in my neck of the woods was doing a fallout shelter, but I know within, a few miles of where I lived, there were people who were doing, just that.
Yeah. They were taking their basement and making a hole in the wall and digging out a chamber and lining it with concrete. And
Yeah.
yes, when the bomb falls, I'm going to be safe.
You're right. In
Except
fact,
how do I get out of this chamber into the radiation? And
right. Let's see. Yeah. What did we? I think we had aluminum foil for our hats, right?
yeah,
Something like that.
So-
So yeah, and hey, Chicken Little, the sky didn't fall, did it?
no, it didn't. Although, to be fair about why they were worried so much, Sault Ste. Marie, which had a big steel mill, a big lumber mill, and the locks, which translated into a major route for shipping, it was a prime target.
Sure. I mean, we had, the worry was not without cause, but how much could we, control what was, going on? Could we, just every day tremble and quake that this might be the day that we get hit by the Soviet Union? Or do we go on about our daily business? And the Stoics would say, hey, your daily business is something that you can control,
Yeah,
and go on instead of quaking and being anxious. Although, like I say, if you want to be anxious, or you don't want to be anxious, get a copy of the book.
yeah,
Okay, so shamelessly hawking the book, right, Ralph?
right. But the book is good.
Okay, so this has been part 2 of our 2026 anxiety show. We say, there are some reasons to be anxious, but don't let it overcome you, right, Ralph?
Right, and we will talk more in the upcoming year as events bring